We're in the middle of chapter 2, or as it's called technically Siman 2, letter number 2. It's not really chapters here in the Iggeres Hakodesh. And we are discussing, I think one of the, what we'll end up with is actually a very, very current and important topic, but we're discussing the idea of humility. What is humility in its truest form? A lot of times you have people who are officially humble people and very, very, humble, but sometimes the whole humility is part of their identity, that I identify as a humble person. Humble guy, I always sit, I don't sit in the first row, I walk in quietly, and so the person's aware that he's being humble. Which that's not really humility, that's just a checklist of really fine qualities you have. I have a quality of I'm generous, I'm kind, I'm nice, I'm humble. Humility is not something you do, it's something you are. A lot of times we associate humility as something I do. I do things humbly. Oh, it's a good thing. But true humility we're talking about is where there's no sense of I am lowering myself down and being humble. Right. Why should I not be humble? This is my identity. I don't have to have my it's like the need. I once listened to a story about this very pious person that his whole life he kept it a secret that he was a scholar. And when people found out, he was very angry. I'm like, you're getting angry? What? It was like a whole thing to be a scholar. It's like if you're humble, then you don't care. They don't find out. Interesting story. The Rebbe was once talking about people who give charity, but want to do it. He was talking about the importance at the Farbringen of giving charity with a lot of awareness to other people, which means people should know mitzvah lefarsa meisa mitzvah. It's good to advertise it because it encourages others to do it. So the Rebbe was saying that usually a mitzvah is good, done quietly is very good. But in the community, it's good. People should know you're giving charity and encourage others to do the same. If somebody wants to do it silently and quietly, he can do two things. He can give a large amount quietly, and then he can give another amount with pompous, and no one will know. But for that person, it's more annoying. No one knows that I'm still giving quietly more. It's like everyone who does things anonymous, not everyone, many, hoping somebody finds out anonymously that they're being anonymous. I mean, not all of us, but there's a certain element to that. True humility is that we're talking about here is that I don't have an ego. It's not that I don't know my qualities. It's not that I don't think that I do things very well. So self-esteem, confidence, awareness of yourself, your flaws, and your qualities are important. But the difference ends up being how you respond to others. The ultimate test of humility is how do you treat other people and how do you see other people? Are they somebody who you're sort of being generous and kind to? Are they lesser than you? Do you treat them, or the best example is, do you get offended easily? Are you offended what people do? Do you hold something inside of you? It's all yourself protecting, and don't hold something. Don't think about, what they say, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Don't spend so much time thinking of yourself. That's really the first half of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe was talking about. Where does this come from? Where does humility come from? True humility, and this is the first half of this letter. It comes from close to Hashem. See, when you get close to Hashem, there are two different possible reactions. Let's say close to Hashem in a materialistic way, where you have a lot of money or a lot of skills, a lot of talent. Some people, the more blessings they have from God, the more humble they are. The more they feel like, wow, God's amazing. He gave me the ability to study, he gave me the ability to give charity, he gave me the ability to speak well, he gave me the ability to, have a nice home. I feel humbled by all these things. Some people, and this comes from klipa, comes from concealed good or not the world of good, we could say evil, is the more you have, the more you feel I have rights to it. I deserve it. What do you mean? That's all you gave me? It's like the difference we say if someone has a job and gets paid, in his mind, which is good, by the way, you should get paid for a job. In your mind, it's like you're not impressed or happy when you get it. I deserve this. I worked hard. Of course I'm getting paid. When someone doesn't have a job and he's doing a favor to somebody, I give you a ride to the airport and you give me a beautiful gift, or you buy me a expensive gift, an iPad to take you, that was unexpected. So it comes out the end. What's the difference between your response? Am I expecting this? Do I deserve it or not? In other words, the more you would think you expect something, the less you're appreciative of it. Because what do you mean? I worked for a whole year. Of course I got to get paid a salary. I don't have to say thank you. If I get a tip, if I get a bonus, if I get something for free, wow, that's a thank you. So someone who's in a state of holiness, everything he gets from Hashem is a surprise to him. Or if not a surprise, it's a appreciated, undeserved gift. And therefore, it's like, wow, Hashem gave me children, Hashem gave me health, Hashem gave me happiness. There's all these things you walk away more and more humbled and more small. The guy who thinks he earns it, the guy who has an ego, the guy who thinks I deserve it, the more he gets is, that's all. I expected more. I expected this. I deserve this. How come I? Why is this important to know? Because we have a very interesting thing that we want to finish off in last week's topic before we go to the rest of the chapter. We talked about that. Hi, good morning. We talked about that the more chesed someone has, chesed means Hashem is reaching and bringing me close to him. The closer you are to God, the more you realize how insignificant I am, how small I am. And that's really the source of all humility comes from. When you're standing in front of greatness, the closer you are, the more you're feeling humbled. It's like standing next to a mountain or giant, the Grand Canyon we mentioned last week, it was 2 weeks ago. Last week was the funeral. That when a person is close to something, that's when he truly appreciates the magnitude of it and the smaller he feels. So when someone comes closer to Hashem, when does that happen? When Hashem does for you kindness. We know kindness is chesed in Hebrew. Chesed is the right hand. In Hebrew, we have the right and the left. Chesed and gevura. Chesed means that Hashem is bringing us closer, because we have a rule that says, hayamin mekarev, the right hand is always bringing you closer, and the small deicha, the small is always pushing away. That means if Hashem is being kind to you, he's bringing you closer. If he's bringing you closer, automatically you feel small, you feel humbled. So the nature of a person who's in tune to godliness is that the more you're getting chesed, the more humble you become. That's the process. Chesed is God's right hand brings you close. The closer to Hashem you are, the more you realize his greatness, and the more you realize your smallness, and you become smaller. That's the general pattern. So you find the interesting thing. At first glance, it seems like by the forefathers, it was sort of a inconsistency here. It seems like, Avraham had 2 sons. Yitzchak, his son, and then Yishmael, who was from this concubine, from Hagar. Who seems to be more like Avraham? It says Yishmael had a chesed, he had a kindness. Yitzchak had gevurah, he had strictness. At first glance, Yitzchak seems to be less like his father. His father's chesed, Avraham is kindness, and he's gevurah. Whereas Yishmael is like his father. You go down another generation, Yitzchak has 2 sons, Esav and Yaakov. Esav is gevurah. He's like Yitzchak. His father Yitzchak is gevurah. Esav's the same way. He's tough. He's how he uses gevurah. And Yaakov seems to have gone another path of Tiferes. So at first glance, it looks like the son who was not such a good son is more similar to the father. But the truth, it couldn't be more opposite. Because the way you know if someone's similar is, what does the chesed cause? So chesed by Avraham caused him to say, V'anechi afar ve'efer, I am nothing, I am but dust and ashes. After the more kindness Hashem did to him, he captured his son late, his nephew late back from the enemy. He felt small, he felt tiny, he felt insignificant from all the kindness. Yishmael, he felt bigger, he felt greater. He became such a beast, so to speak, because he took all his kindness, because he had what's called chesed de klippa. Now, it doesn't mean that klippa doesn't do kindness. Klippa does kindness, but it's a kindness that it's recognized for myself. I will give a donation, so everyone will see that I am kind. I will give people a ride, and I will give someone this. I am known, I have the finest skills in Achnas Archim. I do the best. I am the best host. I am the best at this. In other words, I am doing things, but really it's motivated and pushed and pulled by my own ego. And we see many times in the world are people who do things publicly and grandly. Not that you shouldn't. You should do tzedakah publicly, but it shouldn't be because it makes you feel important. If it does, by the way, it says by mitzvahs. Whether it's sitting. Some people. Let's take not the example of tzedakah. That sounds something that's personal. Let's take an example of sitting and learning. Some people sit and learn because they're really sincere people. They don't think about anybody else. They sit down and learn. Many of us sit down and learn because it's good to come to shul 20 minutes early. And people walk at the shul, they see I'm sitting with the sefer, and it looks good. I take it 20. It's like the best 20 minutes to learn right before people come to shul. I come in. The bottom line is I'm sitting and learning. So it says, the Rebbe quotes the Talmud where it says, "La'elam yilmad adam shaloi lishma, shemetayich shaloi lishma bo lishma." Better learn for the wrong reasons. Eventually, you learn for the right reasons. Meaning, start off, it's like a habit. There's certain things you do. I'll give charity, but I don't. Maybe I'm giving charity. Maybe I'm learning because I'm just getting. I buy the nicest esrog because everyone looks at me. You know what? Buy the nicest esrog. Let everyone look at you. And the bottom line is doing a mitzvah. Meaning, you have to always know the end result. A person shouldn't say, "Well, I'm going to be more authentic, so I'm not going to learn now because I'm learning for fake. I'm not going to give tzedakah because maybe I'm giving tzedakah for fake. Do it for fake. At least you're doing it because the receiver gets the charity. The Torah study is being studied. The mitzvah is being done. So that's what we always say. But at the end of the day, if you want to get now authentic to yourself, There's a big difference between doing it for the right reasons and doing it for the shallow reasons. And both of them are called chesed. Being kind, giving a homeless man a breakfast, or giving a person who needs food or clothes, whatever clothes, they're both a mitzvah. But does that chesed make you feel like a big shot or a small shot? And this is the difference to know, do I got to work on myself? Do I got to change myself? So that's what we're talking about until now. I'm saying with Esav. Esav had Gevurah. His Gevurah didn't cause people happiness. His Gevurah caused people to be assaulted, abused, etc., etc. But Yitzchak's Gevurah caused people to feel better. It was a Gevurah of measure. They say oftentimes a woman is called Gevurah, not a man. Because a man is not as calculating with the needs of each child. A mother is more in tune to the needs. Gevurah also means din, exactness. A mother knows exactly what each child needs. This child, he doesn't like the crust of his bread. This kid likes this. The father's like, I don't know, just take it. I made the sandwiches. The mother's going to cut off the ends and she's going to make sure one has the mayonnaise, one without the ketchup, put the ketchup, because she understands. Yitzchak had that sense of exactness and knew how to do things right. So that's just the end of the subject. Chesed and Gevurah are all these things. It all depends at the end. What's your true essence? What's your self? Are you a person of humility and less what we call bittul, not self, or are you about self? And that will affect also how you do things, and how you eventually get offended and don't do things. Oftentimes a person will do something and somebody will make the wrong comment, wrong statement, wrong thing, and you're turned off. That's it, I'm done. What happened? The only reason you did it was because everyone was giving you a thank you? Okay, it's nice to get a thank you, and you should get a thank you, and you should do it nice, but the motivation can't be for yourself, it has to be for other. And this is a very challenging thing, because our nature from birth is to have an ego. Hashem created us 13 years or 12 years before we got the possibility of humility. So our default, or if you want to do, which is our impulses, are always going to be ego, always going to be naturally for self. Ego doesn't mean necessarily a big shot, I'm better, but it's the sense of what I need, what's good for me, what's right for me. Hashem made us that way for a few reasons. Number one, that's how we survive in the world. That's how we take care of ourselves. That's how we make sure we brush our teeth and shower and eat, because we take care of self. But also, that's the struggle. The struggle is to transform self into to learn to adapt, not to what you'd like to do, what's easy to do, what you're supposed to do, what you should do. But at the end of the day, the whole chapter you're starting off here is that he says, I come out of prison. He's released. This is 1798. The Alter Rebbe is released from prison. And he says, Katointi, I feel humbled. I feel humbled by what had happened to me. Meaning he's saying, not just as a expression of what he's doing. He's telling his Chassidim, as we'll see the second half of the letter we'll do today, it's a message to the Chassidim, and we'll see it's a message for all times, how to conduct yourself when something good happens to you. You win the lottery, well, then you should just leave. Don't tell anybody. But it's a big one today. I think it's 1.2 billion. So, unless somebody won last night, I don't know. So, the bottom line is, when something very good happens to you, something beautiful happens, your result should not be, I feel good because I'm top of the world. I feel so good and I feel so humbled. I feel so amazingly appreciative that Hashem did this for me. And it's a process to work on it, because our nature is to say, I did it. I pulled it off. I succeeded. And so again, it's the story of a chassid, the story of a Jew, is the idea of humility in the experiences of life. And the big test, like I said, is also how, as we'll see in a minute, how you respond. Okay. That is that catching up I wanted to do for yesterday.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
There is one person who epitomizes what you just said. And his funeral is today. Can we do this class in honor of him?
Sure. Who's this?
I'm Walder. I want to know.
There's
Dr. Walder.
All right.
Chicago.
Absolutely. Yes. I saw they actually.
He's given.
I just saw that they changed the minions this morning. You know, in the mornings, his funeral is going to be at a Terrace Yala, using this big hall.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know who it was. I just knew it was somebody very special passed away.
Yeah.
And I saw the messages from Rabbi Epstein, other places that they're doing change in the schedule, so everyone can go to the minyan. Everyone can go to the funeral.
What time?
I think it's 10.
Yeah.
I think the funeral's right now, actually.
Right. It's like.
Yeah, I think the funeral is called for 10 o'clock.
He is the most humble person in the world. He would never.
So let's dedicate the learning today, especially this topic, to Chaim of blessed memory. And his full name, I don't know, but it should be for his neshama, and it should be a benefit to him. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I did see that they did change the service schedule in some shuls. Okay. If you get that, just let us know. Yosef Walder. Hashem should bless him. Okay, now we're coming to, and thank you for bringing that up. Now we're coming to the last 2 points of this chapter, which are both very fascinating. The first point is like this. It says, and he quotes, the Alter Rebbe quotes Yaakov Avinu. And he says when he was coming towards Esav, he said, Katainti, this is where the original verse comes from. I feel small from all the kindness that Hashem did. And we say, what did he feel small about? Hashem promised him, I'm going to be with you. So we gave different interpretations. One of the explanations, why did Yaakov feel undeserving? Hashem told you, I'm going to be with you. He said, Shema digrem hachet. Maybe sin caused I don't deserve it anymore. But Hashem told me, I'll be with you, I'll take care of you. I was maybe in a good place. Maybe since then, I've sinned. So the question is, both for the Alter Rebbe and for Yaakov, how could you say he sinned? We're talking about people who are known as the Markava. A Markava, the Avos, the Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the mothers as well, are called the Markava. The definition of Markava means a chariot. A chariot is something pulled by, it doesn't like today, chariots have their own engines. They're called cars. In the old days, they didn't have cars. It was called chariots. How did they work? The horse pulled it. The chariot didn't have the chariot never thought, okay, the horse is turning left, I'll turn left too. Okay, going straight, I'll go straight. The chariot, by definition, is an identity. The way it's hooked up to the horse just goes where the horse goes. The forefathers were like that. They only went where Hashem pulled them. There's an incredible story that I think I once shared it, but to me, it's one of those really neat stories because it's a Rebbe. The fifth Rebbe of Chabad was once asked, from where does he know that washing the way Chabad washes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is the right way? Because there are different customs, 1, 1, 1, just 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, different ways to wash. He says, how do you know the way? What's the source? How do you know the way that you're doing it is the correct way? Someone asked him, not as a challenging, but to understand. The Rebbe Rashab answered him that since I have trained my body to only do what the Torah says and the Shulchan Aruch says. So the fact that this is how I do it, I know it's the right way. To me, that is such a deep concept. If the average person would say that, would say, excuse me, get out. If I did it, that's right. But the Rebbe Rashab was explaining, the Avos were perfect people. They were people that only did what Hashem wanted. The Alter Rebbe was a tzaddik of the highest stature. How could we say that Shema Yigrem Achet? Maybe the worry is that I did something wrong. So we have to understand the definition of a sin. Definition of chet. We translate it as sin. But chet really means to lack. It's missing something. We find different places in the Torah. I don't want to get to the beautiful, the eulogy that the Arizal gave at the Ramak's funeral. He got into this whole point, what the word chet, that it means lacking. Here he said, if he's lacking a reason to die. He said, there's no reason why the Ramak should have died. Why did it happen? He says, because of the tree of knowledge. That's it. On the tree. But so what's chet mean? Chet means is lacking. Lacking means not that I did something wrong. I had the potential to do more and I didn't tap into my full potential. One of the phenomenal things you find in many of the Rebbe's talks is that the measure or the mission of a person is to use every gift you have. I mean, if Hashem gave you a gift to be an artist, Hashem gave you a gift to cook, Hashem gave you a gift to teach, Hashem gave you a gift to be able to be high energy person, and you don't use that gift now, you're not sinning in the sense I'm doing a sin. You're sinning in the way of I'm not using, I'm lacking. And it's like someone gave you a certain amount of materials to build a house, and you say, you know what, I'll make the house a little smaller. All those extra materials, well, save for something else. You had materials to use, you didn't use it. When you're born, this is what I referenced to, if you remember 2 weeks ago, at the end of the class, there's a mimer from the Rebbe, Leisia Meshakela, very, very heartsick, very, very, a lot of feeling in the mimer, very powerful mimer, very famous, 1952, Rebbe said this mimer. And the point at the end of the mimer is that Hashem gives every single person a certain amount of days, a certain amount of years, a certain amount of hours and minutes, and a certain amount of skills, and a certain amount of wealth, and a certain amount of possessions and family. Exactly what you need to do your particular mission. Hashem calculates, this person needs 102 years, 6 months, a week, and 2 hours. That's what this person needs to do, everything they have to do in life, perfectly. If you have minutes in your life that you're wasting, Hashem calculated for you, what are you doing with this time? Did you use it out? Did you use it out to the full? You were given more muscles than the other person. You were given a faster speed. You were given the ability to do 2 things at once. The Rebbe has a whole beautiful sikha why when they carried the beams, we had it a little while ago, beams for the Mishkan, the wagons were so small. They had to use, and they had such a limited amount, the amount of the weight of the beams and the size of the wagon was just enough, was teeter-tottery. They had to have Levium go behind to make sure it didn't fall off. Why? He wanted to make sure the bulls used every ounce of their strength. The people used every ability. Everything was used to the maximum, teaching us when it comes to serving Hashem, you got to use things to the absolute maximum ability and a potential 100%. Nothing should be left. Yaakov was worried, maybe I didn't do 100%. Maybe I could have done one more thing here, one more thing. In other words, not that I sinned. Maybe I'm lacking. And because I'm lacking, I didn't use out my mission, and therefore I'm undeserving. Meaning, for the average person, when they've done a job, they say, I did it perfectly. I did it to the best that I can. Most of us never experience the best we can, unless, unfortunately, we're living in times like in Israel or places in the 1940s and 30s or times in the Maccabees where you're basically under a burden and you're then doing the best you can. The best I can, sometimes God gives us challenges because he feels, hey, you could be using more of your, you know what I'll do? I'll throw you a trick, a challenge, a hill. Okay, now I got to use more muscles to climb the hill. So like when you're exercising just, little dumbbell is not going to do it. Like for me, I got to have 150 pounds in each hand to do it properly. I don't want to show off, but come on. No. I'm just being humble. I'll tell you it's really more. Okay. So, all kidding aside, we have to use it at our full strength. And this is what Yaakov was saying. Maybe I didn't use out every ability I had. And this is such an important lesson the Alter Rebbe is telling us. That's the second point. And now for the final point of the chapter, which is fascinating. And if we could live up to this concept here, I think the world would be a much happier place. Okay, we're in the middle of the chapter here, where by the words Ulazais. Ulazais, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines in the bottom, first word on the line. So here's a letter he's writing in 1798, after he comes out of prison, and he's writing this to the Chassidim. Just understand what's going on here. The Chassidim, at that time, the Misnagdim, who were called Misnagdim, the opponents of Hasidism, were not just opponents philosophically, and not just opponents emotionally or in spirit. They were opponents in the sense of reporting the government, to the Czarist government against them. Jews were arrested. Jews lost their jobs. They were physically, unfortunately, attacking and beating up, in some cases very viciously. It was unfortunate. And they had, by the way, I know it sounds weird, they had the best intentions. I once heard that, I think it was the Alter Rebbe himself or someone said, if only we would do a mitzvah with the same intensity and sincerity as when Alter Rebbe was being arrested, there was this old Misnagid who picked up a rock and threw it at the wagon that arrested the Alter Rebbe, like disgust at him. And this guy in his heart was defending Judaism. The Alter Rebbe to him was such a dangerous thing. He said, if only we would do a mitzvah with the same love that he did when he threw that rock. Meaning, most of them, unfortunately, the next generation were already decrepit and much of their sincerity. But the original Misnagdim were really sincere. The next generation, a lot of those who were making trouble in the bad way were already next level. But the bottom line is they were so vicious and so hurtful, and so they gave Jewish people such a difficult time, the Chassidim. So he says to them now imagine, the tables turned 180 degrees. The Alter Rebbe is coming out with they had him arrested. They made up a story that he's supporting the Ottoman Empire, who at that time controlled Israel. He was sending money to Israel, as we'll see in the forthcoming letters. So they made up the story that he's supporting the Ottomans and he's starting a revolution. Don't say revolution or rebellion to the Tsar. He doesn't like that. I mean, it didn't work out so good at the end, So the bottom line is, when the Alter Rebbe came out of jail, it was such an uplifting time for the Chassidim. It was such a shocker, such a surprise. No one dreamed that there would be a turnaround. The Tsar would change his mind and everything. So it was the opportunity for the people to go, big, look at this. Now we got it. No, to sort of go back and point your finger in the face, or to, God forbid, take revenge. He says, when you have a kindness come to you, it should make you more humble. And the humility we're going to see is not just within yourself, it's how you treat people. The ultimate humility is not how you act yourself. It's very easy to say, I'm humble, I'll be humble, I'll sit here on my terms. I mean, he gave me a bad seat, that's different else. Someone didn't invite me to the simcha, I'm offended. But I won't go because I'm humble. We have a trouble applying humility on an impulse level. On a character level, we could do it. But on an impulse level, we should get offended when someone offends us. To be able to respond to offensive behavior with humility, that's what the Alter Rebbe is writing here. Ulazoisi says, amazing words here. I'm coming to make a major instructions. I'm going to give a very serious instructions. Leklolis anash, to all of anash. Anash is how we use the term Hasidim, Hasidic families. And by the way, the Rebbe says in the Maimer that when he says here Klal Hanash, he's not just talking to those 1700s. He's talking to all of us throughout all generations. I'll tell you, all of Hanash, not just now, everybody. Al Ribui HaChasadim, on the many goods. What's the many goods? Not just many goodnesses, not just that I was released from prison, but in heaven they allowed us to teach Torah. In heaven, it was given permission, as we know the famous story when he was in prison, the Maggid of Bezrich and the Baal Shem Tov, both who had passed away since, had come to visit him and explained to him that there was originally a decree in heaven to cut off all the Chassidus. You were teaching too much, and now the decree has been to open it up. They abolished the decree and go ahead, full force ahead, as we see, taught much more, at much greater length after the arrest, after the release. Asher Higdil Hashem Lasei Manu. To this that Hashem did for us the kindness that both the turnaround on the physical level and release from prison, and both on the spiritual level, we're going to start doing Chassidus like never before, a whole new level of Chassidus teaching. Make sure we grab onto the middah of Yaakov. Yaakov is a third. He's the one who we're talking about here, Katainti. He's the one. What's a third? Third is emes. Third, the middah of Yaakov is emes. Emes is not just that I'm good. The Rebbe in 1981 or 82, I think it was. In 82, they picked Man of the Year. Something interesting. They always pick Man of the Year. So the Rebbe then spoke by the Farbringen. I watched the video here, so I watched it in this room. The Rebbe was saying, what does it mean, Man of the Year? If you're a mensch this year and you weren't a mensch last year, then you're not a mensch. And if last year you were a mensch and this year you're a mensch, you're not a mensch this year. And if you're a mensch always, so why a Man of the Year? You're a man forever. What is a Man of the Year? He says, you know what? If it works to honor somebody at a dinner and you feel good to do it, do it. But I don't get it. Man of the Year. He says, if you're a mensch, you're always a mensch. The guy who's a thief is not someone who only steals sometimes. He doesn't steal. A thief I only steal once a week. You're not a weekly thief. You're a thief. You happen to act upon, So being humble, he says, is not just when it's convenient. I'm humble here, but here I'm not going to be humble. And by the way, being humble doesn't mean you allow yourself to be stepped on. Being humble, on the contrary, the more humble you are, the more you stand up for what's right. Because it's not about you; it's about the subject. Again, this idea of humility is one of the great subjects in Chassidus. Humility doesn't mean you're quiet. Humility, it means I don't let myself get in the way of what has to be done. Sometimes what has to be done is to get up and speak. Sometimes it's to protest that someone's attacking Israel. Sometimes it means to make a statement. Sometimes it means to be quiet. What humility demands means it's not what I want or how I feel. It's what is needed of me. That's a definition of humility. But he says, I'm coming to be like Yaakov, the absolute ultimate humility. Like it says, so we have two verses that talk about that the Jewish people should be like leftovers. Sometimes you have leftovers, like, I don't want leftovers. Didn't you make me some fresh food? No, it's leftovers. Leftovers sometimes, especially if leftovers are, the way you refer to here is not just leftovers, but the pot was emptied out. You're ready to wash the dishes, but there's little stuff stuck to the side there. That leftovers, act like that leftovers. You're so unimportant that you weren't even saved in the Tupperware for later. You're just getting into the sink. There's nothing more enjoyable when someone says to you, do you want some? If not, we're throwing it out anyway. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for offering this to me because I love those offers, But the idea is that leftovers have an insignificant part to them. We were done. This is the leftovers. And unfortunately, there's a whole Maimer Chassidus, how it's explained, that the leftovers are taken oftentimes to the dogs outside. And in the palace in the old days, it was taken to the dogs. And the Rebbe has a Maimer actually coming up. Yud Alf Nissan Maimer, describing how in the world Hashem creates things. There are things that are made for particular purposes, and then there are things that are just made for the dogs. And it's a whole fascinating analysis of again, similar to the idea of humility, understanding a role, etc. But the bottom line is, he says a person has to make himself of this leftovers. It means he makes himself like he's just leftovers, moisturize and things that are unneeded. Moisturize are the unneeded parts. Okay, we don't need this. It's the sawdust. It's the pieces, the little chips of wood. You can burn in the fireplace. There's no need for it. A person should have that type of humility, not in the self of no self-esteem, but in the self of don't think of yourself as something that, they need me here. I'm important. You have your job to do. You were created for a purpose, which chapter 41 goes to the other extreme. We had it, if you remember, about 4 years ago, that you're basically, that a person has to know every time it comes an opportunity to do a mitzvah, to do a sin, you have to know one thing. Hashem created the heavens and the earth. They created the angels. They created everything. All that was just for me right now. So that's a sense of responsibility to know that everything was created for this moment for you, but not about you, but what has to be done. Are you going to rise to the occasion or are you going to miss it out? But here he says you have to make sure you're like a humility to the fullest extent. Do not raise up your heart to your friend. Don't let it walk out like, okay, guys, who's winning now? Look who's winning. Meaning you guys try and get us, we got you. Has mila hasker. I'm making it very clear, not to in any way, meaning I make it very clear, not to act in this way, not to act in such a fashion. Don't mention anything to them. Make sure you have the absolute humility before every single person, including these guys that attacked you, these guys that bothered you. The same guy who yesterday put me in prison. It's a fascinating story, by the way, when Alter Rebbe came out of jail. So he had already, this is written a year later, when he came out of jail, he was taken first to the wrong house. By mistake, there was the people who deposited him they had a nice escort. They brought him to the house of one of the leading misnagdim. And not only he didn't go to the house of the chassid that was next door or upstairs, it was like a duplex, but they brought him to his house of one of the guys who was the biggest troublemakers. And the guy opens the door, he comes inside, the Alter Rebbe sits down, and the guy spends, I think, 2 or 3 hours yelling at the Alter Rebbe, telling him off the chutzpah, what you do, and give him the whole speech. Until the Chassidim realized, where is it? They delivered the Alter Rebbe a while ago. Where is he? They go, 1 second, maybe he went to the wrong house. They come inside, and they hear this guy screaming before they even come to the door, screaming at the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, they come in, the Alter Rebbe first says, let me finish my tea, and thank the host, I had a glass of tea. And I gave him while he yelled at him, of course, because he was a good from a yid. You have a Jew in your house. Before you yell at him, you give him tea. Anyway, the Alter Rebbe said, I don't want any of my chassidim to touch him or to say a word to him. No one responded, because this was like really like the cream on the cake as far as antagonism. The Alter Rebbe actually commented later that the 2 or 3 hours in this guy's house was worse than his 53 days in prison. That's what he commented later. But he told the chassidim, so one guy there was not a chassid of his. He was a Polish chassid, but he saw the whole story. He went and beat up the guy. He said, I'm not a chassid, I can do what I want. I'm not listening to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe didn't want anyone to touch him or to disrespect him, because that's not our way. Getting revenge against a fellow, meaning, I'm not getting into the complexities of, fighting an enemy. There you have a mitzvah to destroy the enemy. But we're talking about a fellow Jew or a fellow person who's not Jewish, who to hold a grudge, to hold a feeling inside of you, this is the antithesis of anything connected to humility. Because if you're normal and you have some ego, how do you have such a chutzpah to do this to me? Just me, you can't do this to me. The absence of ego, the absolute humility is, okay, I must have deserved it from somewhere. Okay. You don't hold it against the person. You don't hold it. This is what was supposed to happen. Be in a very soft spirit. And a soft voice, which calms the anger. The Alter Rebbe is telling us something in general to know. When you're angry and you feel like you want to yell, talk in a soft voice. It will calm the anger. There's something very cool. We spoke many times about you have emotions, you have intellect, and it comes out through a speech. See, speech doesn't really change. Usually, it doesn't have to change, at least, based on emotion. What changes is the ear, the hevel, becomes everything in the world has an intermediary. You have the emotion and you have the speech. Intermediate is called the ear, going from the voice box or your lungs, wherever it works on now, it works inside. There's a certain ear that comes out. That ear density and pressure and moving is what changes. So the words can be the same words, but when they come out screaming and shouting, or they come out soft or with energy or emotion or crying, that's all pent up. How much emotion is put into this ear, and that's what expresses either a screaming voice or a crying voice or a kvetchy voice if you have people kvetch. So the bottom line is there is a way to say something in a soft voice. What that does, it works actually reverse and calms the emotions, because this ear between them could be affected not just by what you're saying, and being silent is very good, but speaking softly actually calms you down. And the Alter Rebbe says, if you're angry, just talk in a soft voice. Use inside voices, and it actually makes a difference. A broken spirit. This is where the chapter originally ended. There's a nice piece in the Burim. The chapter ends here. The Alter Rebbe later on added on the following words: "V'kulai hay ve'ulai," and maybe, just maybe, Yitin Hashem b'leiv achayim. Maybe your brothers will have put into their hearts kemayim apanim v'gomer. Like water reflects a face. What does that mean? Maybe if you're going to go and affect and change how you respond, instead of responding with, I'm getting you back, the love that you give to them, maybe at some point they'll reflect love back. And he was basing this, what it says by Yaakov, when Yaakov came to Esav, because he removed in his heart, before he came to Esav, any hatred, he came with such a humility to Esav. He was right in the whole story all along. Esav was wrong all along, and he had said something to kill Yaakov. But Yaakov came to Esav with such a feeling of humility in the truest form that he got to Esav. Esav, it says, cried and broke down and kissed him. And according to some of Farshim, that was a sincere. Some say it was fake, but some say it was sincere. But the bottom line is that he broke down and cried. Why was that? Because the feelings that I have inside of me are reflected in someone else. So it's like this. He says the Alter Rebbe succeeded with these words and with these things that the next generation, that took about 30 years, 40 years, next generation of Misnagdim, no longer opponents. There came a time after, by the time of that Tzemach Tzedek already, that they were coming close, and for the next 100 years or so, they were very close until the times of the end of the Rebbe Rashab already, in the beginning of the previous Rebbe. Once again, it was reawakened of Misnagdim, but a much lower type, a very different type, not the same spiritual, other issues, but the hatred of the Misnagdim actually went away. And the Lithuanian school and the Chabad, the Hasidic school, which now it's all the Hasidim, not just Chabad, but all the schools actually became getting along very well. It's an unknown part of the story is that for, I don't know, for 70, 80, 90 years, we got along very well until once again, unfortunately, certain things happened that there was, again, arguments. But the bottom line is the effect of this was that that's why it was added later, because it would take an extra blessing. The kulai haivule, maybe we're going to see that Hashem put into the hearts of their brothers, the Snagdim, to feel the same way. And that did eventually happen. It took some time, but it did happen. Another interesting thing about this chapter is the Rebbe says, I think the Rebbe says, and maybe it's the Rebbe Rashab. I think Rebbe Rashab might say this. Rebbe Rashab, I think, says this. Check who said it. That I thought I shut my phone off. These words, if you look at the last 2 lines of the previous page, it says "Midas emes liYaakov," to take into have humility in the truest form, like Yaakov. He says the Alter Rebbe knew if he would leave these 3 words out, he would have many, many thousands of more chassidim, but he demanded the truth. And for some people, it's like too much. I can't do this. It's like, you know what? I could be humble, but not to the very core of myself or how I see other people compared to me. I can humble before God. I can be humble when I choose to be humble, but to be truthfully humble 24/7. And I think the expression that the Tzemach Tzedek says, the Rebbe Rashab, he would have had 50,000 more chassidim if he would have taken those 3 words out, but he demanded truth. This is the end of this chapter. There's another insight from the Rebbe very deep into this. I'll just finish with this. We'll finish with this. He takes this one level deeper. In every single thing in creation, there has to be what's called a yesh, ayin yesh. For an example, you guys have eggs. Eggs, for them to become a chicken, they first have to rot. The inside, as long as the egg is a fully an unspoiled egg, it's not going to become a chicken. It's going to be an egg. After it starts spoiling, I mean, usually we don't open the chicken then, but after you start spoiling, it slowly starts developing into a new being. Seeds, you put them to the ground, they have to first start rotting, and then everything has to have a certain change. There's many, many examples given all of Yiddishkeit. This is the famous ideas. You have the structure of the base of Mikdash to have the new one built. You have to have the broken luchas to have a new one, new level. Everything needed we had to go through first slavery before we can get to Israel. Always has to be the down before the up in everything in life. Actually, one of the last talks Rebbe gave in Parshas Kesisa, that's 3 weeks before his stroke. He said, when you see a major, major down coming up or happening, you should know it's right before a major, major up. And the bigger the down, the bigger the up. That's what it's a fascinating talk Rebbe gave in literally a few weeks before his stroke. And he seemed to be applying that he said, sometimes for a moment, the teacher abandons the student, but you should know it's only for a moment before it comes back with a much greater revelation. It's a very heavy, heavy sikha. We see this concept here. In order for the Alter Rebbe to come to this much greater level of revelation of Chassidus, he had to go to prison. Meaning, going to prison was what? It was the down, the space between the 2 great moments. So there's the first moment, which was he was teaching Chassidus first, then his 53 days in prison, which they say corresponds to 53 days of the first book of Tanya, 53 chapters of Tanya, and then goes the expansion in a tremendous way of the Chassidus that came after his imprisonment. And the same thing we say of Yaakov. Yaakov needed to go now to the next level. The next level eventually was to transform Esav. Esav is the ultimate klippa. To do it, he had to first internally come to a place of katanti. He had to first put himself in a place of absolute humility. Because until you have the absolute humility, you can't go to the next stage of absolute growth. And what's the absolute growth? to take the Esav of the world, to take the negative energy of the world, and transform it, and eventually come to the point of Mashiach. Now, this is the primarily point that the Rebbe explains, but a deeper aspect of the chapter, and that is the katonti has to be. It says everybody always goes. The tzaddik goes bechayel l'chayel, from strength to strength. But between each one is usually a down, and it's an important thing to know. When you have a down moment in life, it's a very critical to realize, because the quicker you realize, the quicker hopefully things go better. That this is only preparation. What's coming after is much better. There's no such a thing as a down for the sake of down. Every yerida, as you say it, okay, down, but every yerida, every going down is tzarich aliyah for going up. That's the end of letter number 2. Letter number 3, which we're going to start God willing next week, starts a series of 8 or 9 letters, all on charity. This is one halacha. It's so beautiful to watch it. He says there won't be any hunger, and hunger means all types of hunger, not just food and water, any type of need. There won't be any war, any type of war, not even wars between arguments with people, not wars in families, not even wars amongst rabbis arguing. And he says, I can't imagine. There won't be any jealousy, not jealousy because somebody has or someone doesn't have. We're all going to have an abundance. The good will be flowing everywhere. To offer it all treats, all delicacies will be available like dust, meaning it will be so plentiful. Usually when something is limited, when it's not available, that's what makes the price go up, or makes it hard to get. Everyone will have it. And the work of all the people of the world will be El Das Hashem Lavad. All we have to do is sit and try to understand and relate to godliness. And therefore, you, Yisrael, the Jewish people will be great sages. To know things that have been secret until this time. The Shinu as the Asigo as Das Beidam, and they will understand about God as much as a human being can possibly know. Like it says, at that time it says the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Like the oceans are filled with water. Just like the water covers the earth, will be filled with knowledge of God. This is the end, and then we started, of course, the next beginning right away. So, anyway, everyone have a great day, and thank you for coming. Hi, Tanya.
Hello.
You're very welcome. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
You were our representative online today. I only had one. Usually we have 2 or 3. Today you were the one.
Oh, okay. It says
You kept it going.
Yeah, maybe it was you.
Well, have a good day, Tanya. We'll see you.
You too. All the
And
best.
totally remember, 28 days to Pesach.
Oh, so exciting.
The Pesach Seder is Monday night in 4 weeks. So that means less than 28 days. 27 days.
It's all good. It'll be great.
Isn't it crazy how fast it goes? 27, yeah. From Monday night, that's 2 days ago. You want to have another leap month?
I want to talk to you real quick.